1992, the year the Space Shuttle Endeavour made its maiden voyage. Aladdin, Home Alone 2, Batman Returns, and Reservoir Dogs were released this year. It was the year I was born. It was also the year that a cultural phenomenon swept the world by storm, Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat was a game that was released at the right time. This game stood out to the crowd due to its excessive violence and cast of colourful, intriguing characters. Created by the duo of John Tobias and Ed Boon, Mortal Kombat has been an unstoppable juggernaut that is still around today. But before we talk about Mortal Kombat, we need to go back in time to talk about something else first. 1984 saw the release of the arcade game Karate Champ, published by Data East and developed by Technos Japan. This game is widely credited as the origin of the one-on-one fighting game genre. In this game, you play as a karate competitor in a tournament facing against either the computer or another player. Mortal Kombat co-creator John Tobias has cited Karate Champ as one of his major influences for Mortal Kombat. Main reason being that he thought that only having two players on screen would let them have larger character sprites. You might recognise this game from where it was briefly shown in the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Bloodsport. Speaking of Bloodsport, the true origins of Mortal Kombat began, believe it or not, with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Midway had been discussing to obtain the license for Van Damme's film, Universal Soldier. Franchises were big money back then. You would have a guaranteed audience for your game, increasing the likelihood of selling the game quicker. Tobias, however, was more interested in making a game more in vein of Van Damme's other film, Bloodsport. Tobias had sought after Van Damme for his fighting game idea to justify making this game for Midway. Eventually the deal with Van Damme fell through and Tobias's idea for a fighting game seemed to be dead in the water. That was until Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 is the most influential fighting game of all time. Without Street Fighter 2, the modern fighting game genre would not exist today. Sure, there were other fighters, but they didn't explode into pop culture like Street Fighter 2 did. Street Fighter 2 seemed to combine the best parts of all the previous fighting games and presented them in a nice combined package that the public lapped up. The game stood out to players due to its control layout and game mechanics. The game's use of multiple fighting styles and use of special moves took the arcade scene by storm. Street Fighter 2 is undoubtedly the godfather of all modern day fighters, including Tekken, Virtua Fighter, King of Fighters, and of course, Mortal Kombat. The success of Street Fighter 2 in arcades prompted Midway to task the duo of Ed Boon and John Tobias to create a combat game for release within the year. One of the first characters conceptualized was Johnny Cage, a Hollywood actor and martial artist. Johnny Cage was a reference to the actor Jean-Claude Van Damme, even sharing the same first two initials of JC. I'm not sure where the idea of digitizing actors came in. I would imagine though that it was a remnant from when Tobias wished to use Jean-Claude Van Damme. Whatever the reason, the duo opted to use digitized actors rather than traditional animated sprites. This was a technique first used in the video game Journey, based on the band of the same name. The technique is how it sounds. Live actors are videoed or photographed against a green screen. They are then put into the video game and manipulated by the player. Production began and the development team consisted of 4 people: Ed Boon, John Tobias, John Vogel, and Dan Forden. The 4 would spend the next 10 months creating the game, which would be known as Mortal Kombat. Street Fighter 2 was used as a template for Mortal Kombat. Many of the same mechanics were replicated, but either tweaked or changed completely. The most notable addition was the blood and gore. It was decided to include blood splatter when hitting opponents. This was done in my opinion to differentiate the game from Street Fighter 2 and to give it more of its own identity. Then there were the famous fatalities.
Sub-Zero wins flawless victory fatality.
Fatalities were added into the game after it was decided what to do with the dizzied mechanic. Originally when a fight would end, the losing player would be dizzied and the player would get a free hit at the end. This felt unsatisfying and they weren't too sure how to fix this. They had decided to give the boss, Shang Tsung, a finishing move where he would chop off the player's head. It was then thought, what if the players could do this with each other? Thus, the fatality was born. Originally it was conceived to keep fatalities a secret and no one at Midway expected players to find them out. The first test was filming actor and martial artist Daniel Pesina portray Johnny Cage. They used this to present their pitch to the Midway higher-ups. Soon, more fighters were added to the roster. The Shaolin monk Liu Kang, portrayed by Ho Sung Pak. The Black Dragon Clan member Kano, portrayed by Richard DeVizio. Special Forces operative Sonya Blade, portrayed by Elizabeth Maliki. Thunder God Raiden, portrayed by Carlos Pesina. The Vengeful Spirit and Ice Warrior Scorpion and Sub-Zero, both portrayed by Daniel Pesina. Non-playable characters were Shang Tsung, portrayed by Ho Sung Pak, and Goro, portrayed via stop motion. There was also a hidden character, Reptile, also played by Daniel Pesina. For 6 months of the development, none of them could agree on a name. Some of the names floating around were Kumite, Dragon Attack, Deathblow, and Fatality. Eventually, it wasn't even a person on the MK team that came up with the iconic title. Somebody had crossed out the C in the word Kombat and had replaced it with K. Pinball designer Steve Ritchie had then suggested the name Mortal Kombat. The name stuck. October 8th, 1992 saw the mass release of Mortal Kombat. The game was a massive hit. Droves of fans moved from Street Fighter II arcade machines and began playing the Mortal Kombat one. Fans returned for more and more, taken in by the over-the-top violence, gore, and of course, the fatalities. Not all was positive though. The violence caused mass controversy. Parents and public officials lambasted the game, believing it was corrupting the youths. Concerned with the realistic actors in the game, hearings were held and Mortal Kombat was used as a prime example of video game violence. The result was the ESRB rating system. The Mortal Kombat team, however, were largely unaware of the controversy. They were busy working on something else. The sequel, Mortal Kombat 2.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe, yeah. Like and subscribe, share. Like and subscribe, yeah. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe, yeah. Like and subscribe, share. Like and subscribe, yeah.